system that it's going to take a long time for this big and strong system to spin down over land. Now, just to give you an idea of how the cone is not the best way to show the risk, look at how wide the significant chances of tropical storm force winds is relative to the state of Florida. It's almost a certainty the entire peninsula will get tropical storm force winds. With hurricane force winds, the chances are greater on the west coast, but they have not gone all the way down on the east coast. With a strong and large hurricane, even if it comes ashore to the west of Miami, they could get hurricane force winds. And again, remember, in those high rises, the winds can be another category stronger if you get about to the 25th floor. Earliest reasonable time of arrival, time you got to be ready in southeastern Florida and the Florida Keys would be around sunrise tomorrow. You might have a little more time than that, but it is going to be a day when the conditions are deteriorating. And if you look in the Collier County, Naples area, Mark, that's where they might issue new evacuation instructions for storm surge early tomorrow morning. So get up early, and you're going to show people why they're at risk there over the Naples and Fort Myers area.
You know, if people were discounting the cone right off the bat and looking at individual models that were saying the East Coast, they had a real false sense of security when it comes to the risk of storm surge. And now that some of the models are shifting back towards the west, notice the west coast here, but the east coast too. I mean, all of South Florida and then up through southwest Florida, there is a huge risk of storm surge. Zooming in on a couple of areas, in particular, here's Fort Myers Beach, here's the Naples area, and you've got the color coding right here, right? Orange to red, 6 to 9 feet, or even 9 feet plus. And yes, this is a problem right along the coastline, but it also is a problem if you go up the rivers towards Fort Myers. You got the big river there, and the water can be pushed through, and as the wind comes through the bays, you could have that water piling right on in, kind of behind Fort Myers Beach. It's one thing to see this in color form on a map, but it's another to really try to understand what all this water means in the real world, right? When you're talking about several feet of water, this has huge impacts for you, right? Let's start out by looking at a storm surge of 1 to 3 feet. Remember, water is extremely heavy and thus extremely damaging. If you were to take one of those normal kind of moving boxes and fill it with water, it weighs about the same amount as a smart car. Okay, this is no small amount of water. Let's roll this forward, right? Because 2 feet can start to float a vehicle. So by car, once you get up to 3 to 6 feet of flooding. This is now, you know, I'm on a good day, a little bit under 6 feet. I'd be underwater at this point. But there's that forecast of 9 feet of storm surge, or even more than that. Here we go. 9 feet covers the first floor of most homes. And by more than 9 feet, this is just a brutal situation, certainly life-threatening, and it is not out of the realm of possibility. Our Hurricane Irma coverage continues right now.
We're in the middle of an emergency. This storm is changing.
We remain under a mandatory evacuation.
The state of emergency is still in effect and will remain so until the threat has passed.
If you're not worried, I think there's a problem. You know, everybody should be worried.
Even though the storm has yet to pass, there will be a long road ahead after Sunday.
Don't try to protect your home. That's what the insurance is for. Don't be a hero. If you've got insurance, you're fine.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Irma. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodlow live in Naples, Florida. One of the areas under a mandatory evacuation, the Naples Beach area, basically to the west of US 41, west and south of that area. Mandatory evacuations. They're pleading with people to get off the coastal areas and the barrier islands because of the approach of Hurricane Irma as we head through the weekend here. Storm surge warning here as well as a hurricane warning. We are expecting a surge and hurricane conditions within the next 36 hours. here in Florida, a large area under a hurricane warning. More people have been evacuated or asked to evacuate than they've ever had in the state before. 25% of the population asked to evacuate. Let's bring in the governor of Florida, Rick Scott, on the phone this evening. And Governor, a wild number here, 25% of the people living or residents of your state asked to evacuate. Just an unheard of amount of people for this approach of a hurricane.
Well, Paul, this is just a massive hurricane. It's bigger than our state. It's going to impact us coast to coast. It's bigger than Andrew, which was a devastating storm. What's really scary is the unbelievable amount of storm surge. You're down in the southwest part of the state right now, and we could see 9+ feet of storm surge. That's over our height. That's over our heads. I've got one last plea to everybody in the Florida Keys. Just think about it. This is going to be, you're going to have 150-mile-an-hour winds. You have potential 9+ feet of storm surge. It's going to be very difficult to survive this. I care about everybody in the Keys. Your families care about you. I'm asking you to get out tonight. You don't have much time to go. There's not going to be anybody that can save you. There might not be anybody that can save you even after the storm if you have a problem. We've already evacuated all the hospitals. The individuals that work in and that do all the first responders have to leave for their own safety. So I'm asking every resident of the Florida Keys to leave and go to safety and do it right now. Do not wait.
And Governor, I believe you have family who sometimes live in this part of Southwest Florida. What about them? Are they evacuated? Are they in a safe area?
Well, I live in Naples, Florida, and part of my family lives in Naples, Florida. They've already evacuated. I'm asking everybody in the entire state, you've got to evacuate. If you're in an evacuation zone, you've got to get out. We have shelters open in every county where there's an evacuation order, plus others, other than Monroe County, which you can evacuate from the Keys into Miami-Dade at Florida International University. You don't have to drive a long way. We have shelters. We're opening more shelters. We're going to do everything we can to get you safe. If you don't know how to evacuate, or you don't have the fuel, you can't get there, call the state emergency hotline. It's 800-342-3557. We will get you out. Just think about this. We all love our families. I wouldn't want to miss it. I love every member of my family. I know everybody loves their family. I can't imagine life without them. We want to keep you safe. And if you're in the south part of the state, by midnight tonight, it's too late to get on the road. This storm's coming. It's not that many hours away. The wind is going to be unbelievable. You cannot be on the road. As you all know, we've worked our tail off to get more fuel in the state, and we're going to keep working on it. Our ports are closing. Our airports are closing. So time is running out to go to safety. I'm asking everybody in the Keys to get out. I'm asking everybody that's in the evacuation zone to evacuate right now. I will do everything I can to keep you safe, but we cannot take care of anybody during the middle of a storm.
And Governor, the last couple of weeks we were dealing with the devastation of Harvey, both from the landfall of the hurricane part, then also the devastating rains around the Houston area. Tremendous support, and even support across the state, the South, as well as the federal government as well. Is there any concern that organizations and agencies like FEMA could be perhaps too stretched thin now to respond to a potential disaster here in Florida, considering they're still dealing with a disaster going on currently in Texas after Harvey?
I've talked to the president pretty much every day. The vice president has reached out. I've talked to most of the cabinet members in the cabinet. They've all assured me, and the president does every day, he will do everything. He will provide every resource that the federal government can provide. FEMA is in the state. The lady that runs the Southeast does a wonderful job. I've worked with her in the past. She's at our emergency center in Tallahassee. But I've worked, Scott Pruitt at EPA, everybody has reached out to see what can they do to be helpful. I talked to Secretary Tom Price tonight. We're air evacuating nurses right now from Texas. We do need, by the way, 1,000 nurses to help staff our special needs shelters right now. So I'm asking people to volunteer for that. But I can tell you, people are showing up. We already have 17,000 volunteers. People have committed, but we're going to need more. This is going to be a devastating storm. But I am personally going to do everything I can, and I know the federal government's going to work hard, state and local. We're going to do everything we can to keep everybody safe.
And Governor, this has got to be one of the worst case scenarios in terms of nightmares of what could happen to your state. I know there have been mandatory evacuations for a couple of days now across portions of your state. Has there been a pretty much overwhelming support of those evacuations, or do you think it's been kind of 50-50? Do you have any numbers in terms of who still has not evacuated these mandatory areas?
Well, you can see with our highways, and you can see how many people bought fuel, that people are moving to safety. But as you know, the storm has changed further west in the last few hours. That means we're going to have more storm surge, so we've added more evacuation zones. I was in Palm Beach today, I was in Tampa, and I was in Fort Myers today, just doing everything I can to learn what needs people have and also make sure people are evacuating. So we're opening up shelters. I want to thank Ave Maria University down in Immokalee. They've opened up their field house tonight. There's so many people that are reaching out to do everything they can to be helpful to us. I'm going to say a lot of prayers for everybody in my state. But if you're in an evacuation zone, I just ask you, take care of yourself, take care of your family. We want you to be safe.
And I do think that a lot of people here in Southwest Florida did heed that evacuation with the change in the forecast, and they've been moving out. In fact, we've noticed more and more gas stations here across Collier County and Lee County are now running out of gas and saying no more gas in these stations, and longer lines at the stations that still have gas. You mentioned something about if people are in need of fuel. How can they get that fuel if they're in need of fuel to get out of harm's way?
Well, we've been working to get more fuel in the state. They provided law enforcement escorts to our carriers that are taking fuel from our depots to our gas stations. We've asked our gas stations in evacuation areas to stay open as late as possible. We'll provide you police escort for your employees to get out of the evacuation area to make sure they go to safety. We have the federal government has waived rules that allows us to get more fuel in the state. The EPA, the Department of Energy, and the White House have been instrumental. Vice President Pence was very instrumental in getting that done. President Trump was very instrumental in getting that done. So we've gotten a lot of fuel into our state, but we've used a lot of fuel. And so at this time, it's very difficult to get more fuel in the state and to get more fuel in these roads. We still have more fuel coming in the northern part of the state. It's very difficult now with the ports closing to get fuel into the southern part of the state.
All right, great information. That is the governor of Florida, Governor Rick Scott. Thanks so much for joining us this evening on the phone talking about this. And now I want to switch gears and talk to our hurricane expert, Dr. Rick Knabb, back in the studio here. And again, Dr. Knabb, it's all about timing now. People perhaps with this plea from the governor to get out, the clock is ticking. Let's talk about the drop-dead times here in terms of you should not even attempt to leave because the weather conditions going downhill with the approach of Irma.
Yeah, now that will essentially be a game time decision for folks and local officials tomorrow, but in terms of planning purposes for the Florida Keys and extreme southeastern Florida, you got to be thinking I might get winds of tropical storm force starting as early as 8 a.m. tomorrow, and then in the Collier County area, maybe it would be midday to early afternoon or later. And I think we still have Governor Scott on the line. Governor Scott, this is Dr. Knabb. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, Governor, one thing that we've been talking to some of the local emergency managers about in Southwest Florida, where we are really getting concerned, as I'm sure all of you are. What can we tell folks about how they can work together? Because some people are struggling to identify a shelter, although local EMs will tell them where they might be able to go tomorrow. but help me get the message out to the folks who are not in an evacuation zone who might be able to host someone who needs to evacuate.
If you go to floridadisaster.org, or if you call the statewide emergency hotline, 1-800-342-3557. All right, if you can do that, you can go to airdnb/Florida. If you are evacuating looking for something, or if you're somebody that can host something, all those ways you can be helpful. I ask people, check on your neighbors. Check on your family. We all know the people that are more vulnerable. So I'm asking people to do that. And we can't evacuate you in the middle of the storm. But if you're in an evacuation zone, if you need help, or if you're not in an evacuation zone and you need help getting into a shelter, if you'll call that statewide emergency hotline, we'll connect you with your local emergency management team, and they will do everything they can to get you to safety. I've said all along, I will bear no expense to save a life. We're going to do everything we can to save every life in this state.
Yeah, Governor, thank you so much for everything you're doing. And I know that you and the state emergency managers, local emergency managers have been talking to the Hurricane Center and the local forecast offices through the Hurricane Liaison team to help the local emergency managers make these evacuation decisions. Any particular areas, Governor, that you're most concerned about people being able to get out in time?
Well, right now, there's still some people in the Keys. All the first responders leaving the Keys right now. So just think about the Keys for a second. Look at all the bridges we have down there. If we lose one bridge, everything south of the bridge, everybody's going to be stranded. It's going to take us a while to get back in there to try to provide services. Now, we want to do it, but it's going to take a while when that happens. I'm really worried that now the storm surge that we're starting to hear about on the West Coast. I know I was down in Fort Myers today. I know they're very focused on both opening up shelters, and they're very focused on getting the word out that you've got to evacuate. But it's getting late. We don't have that many hours left. We're going to start getting the wind in the next, I guess by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning in the Keys and probably some in Southwest Florida. So we're running out of time. People have got to take an action right now.
Yes, Governor, thank you for emphasizing that. And one additional point that I've been trying to make for folks in southeastern Florida, for example, who might be thinking, okay, models have shifted west and maybe I'm not going to get much. But one thing that we're seeing on the satellite imagery tonight is that the hurricane is getting wider, which means you don't have to be all that near the center of the eye to get hurricane force winds, storm surge. So I want to give you a chance to re-emphasize to folks on the east coast of Florida that this is no time to undo your plans and evacuations.